On today's The Quad, we have two breaking of ceasefires, also Hamas and also Hezbollah and the Lebanese government. And of course, how could we not talk about our incredibly brave lionesses of Judah who were released yesterday from Hamas captivity. Only on JNS, only on The Quad. Welcome back, everybody, to The Quad in what has been another intense week here in Israel and, of course, around the world. But I'm so blessed to have my wonderful co-host here to unpack everything with you. Emily Schrader, journalist, human rights activist, Shoshana Keats-Jaskal, the founder of Chokhmat Nashim, elevating Orthodox women's voices and fighting discrimination, and all the way from LA, moving here temporarily, Barb Heller, who is an actor and a voiceover artist and has her own one-woman show, which she did a show last night very successfully and sold out. So here we are, ladies, and my God, please, as women, and I cannot be prouder of the 4 soldiers that were released yesterday who were put on stage by Hamas genocidal terrorists to be humiliated. And they came out with such grace, smiling, putting up their hands in the air. What did Hamas expect? They expected them to be going up there like sheep, like embarrassed and humiliated. Oh my God, they were wrong. They proved them. I don't know who was watching and I don't know how people interpret this, but they were far from humiliated. They came out fighting. And what really gets me is these are the women that the army put in these positions to be able to give information and intelligence of what was going on the border with Gaza. And they warned their superiors and they were ignored. And then half of them were killed and the other half of them were taken. And instead of seeing broken women, we saw women who survived. And I don't know, these women have to be leaders of the future. Emily, how did you feel when you were watching this?
I mean, I think you put it better than I could have myself. It was really, really inspiring to see. And it's interesting because we see the initial reports of what they went through. And obviously, we're just at the very beginning of what we're seeing so far. But they spoke about that how Liri Albag was one of their, she was like their moral compass, their leader during their time in captivity. Most of the time they were together, these 5 girls, which as of right now, as it stands, Agam Berger, the 5th girl, is still in captivity. And not only that, but she's been in captivity already a couple days alone. That's what the girl said so far. It's going to be a very, very difficult week. Let's hope that she's released in the next exchange. They did say that she was alive as of a few days ago, so it's good news on that front. Hopefully we'll see her home very shortly. I can't imagine what she's going through this week in particular. But in general, I mean, the way that they've responded to everything is remarkable. And they actually discussed the theatrics of Hamas. In the initial comments, I believe it was Leary or maybe Daniela who stated that they had spoken that they were scared of the prisoner release because every time there's been a hostage exchange, there's been these big parades with mobs of Hamas terrorist men, chanting all kinds of crazy things and wanting to basically lynch them. And they knew that there was going to be something. So they decided that instead of acting like they were scared, even though they felt scared, and instead of acting like they were broken, even though they felt broken, they were like, nope, we're going to show a united front and we're going to show strength. And so when they went on stage and they waved that way and they smiled and they put their arms up together, and you can see that Leary was the leader even in that split second. But you also see like Nama a little bit more nervous. So you see almost their personalities even in this. But at the end of the day, they stood there and they stood proud and they stood united. And I could not be more proud of them as an Israeli woman, as a woman, just remarkable resilience.
When these women came out, we were expecting, because we know that they've been in captivity. We know that they have been surrounded by genocidal maniacs who ripped them from their beds in their pajamas, killed their families and friends in front of them, and have held them hostage for 400 seconds. Let's not pretend that because we're smiling and we're cheering and we're listening, that we're okay. But these women are so strong. I'm watching the videos and tears are streaming. Now, mind you, just to put in context, these bastards at Hamas, who were supposed to give us the list way before, waited until after Shabbat came in. Yep, on purpose.
Yes.
They waited till after Shabbat came in and they broke the ceasefire by not telling us who's coming out. They broke the ceasefire by not telling us who's alive and what their status is. And they waited till after Shabbat. So we're all waiting on tenterhooks. We don't know. Happens to be that, someone in the yishuv always has a phone on because of security. So we knew after Shabbat came in who was supposed to come out. But I didn't turn on my television or my phone to see anything until after Shabbos. And the mind games that they play, that Hamas plays, at every single opportunity, they play games, they psychologically torture not just these girls, but all of Israel. And these girls come out like this. And I'm just like, I don't know how at 18, 19 years old, you have the strength to do so. I don't know. These people are made of something else. I bow down to them and to their strength for giving me strength, for telling me, you want to know something? They embody Israel. They embody Israel. We could be battered and we could be down and we could feel broken, but we are not broken.
And they didn't break us. That's what they got up on stage. They didn't break us. Let's not forget that Naama Levy was taken into the truck with blood on her pants. Let's not forget what they looked like when they were taken. This is just incredible, Barb.
I am reminded of Hannah Senish, and she was a paratrooper who was taken and wrote the song Eli Eli, which I wound up singing at my dad's wedding to my stepmom. And I'm really connected to those words. And I look at these four women as like the Hannah Senishes that got out, and it brings tears to my eyes. I'm really hoping that they have the courage to tell all of their stories, because they each will have a different take on what happened. I can't wait to hear what they have to teach the world from being in there. I always thought, wouldn't it have been great if Hirsch had gotten out with that heart that he had, where he made friends all over the world. And he said, Mom, I'm going across the world, to Rachel, because I don't want to bring friends with me. I want to make new friends. These women have stories to tell. And I just hope you have the courage, because I still sadly have friends back in LA who are like, there's been no rape. We have absolutely no evidence of it. I don't know what people need to see. I don't know how we can get to them and understand the mind games behind these really sick animals. And I'm just praying that they have the courage to tell their stories when they're ready.
But I think it's important that we understand, and that the world, we're never going to know everything that happened. No. And we don't have the right. Exactly. We don't have the right. So as much as I do think they'll tell a lot, I don't think they'll ever tell everything that they went through. We know, without being able to publicize or anything, we know that there were girls who came back who needed abortions. We know that. But Israel will never publish it, because we don't use our people to exploit. And we don't beg for love and respect. If you don't love and respect us for who we are, I don't need you to respect me because I was hurt. That's not who I am.
Also, we're not going to sacrifice the privacy and the dignity of our people for the sake of propaganda, which is what Hamas have got an Oscar in.
I think I was just having a debate about this last night. Why didn't the state of Israel, or why hasn't the state of Israel released statistics about how many rapes there were, or how many reported incidents of sexual assault? Probably they do have this, but we have a certain number, but it's not actually reflective of what happened, because a lot of the people who were victims of this, according to eyewitnesses, were killed. So there's a lot of these stories that can't ever be quantified in terms of statistics. But my question to those people who are saying, well, why isn't there a report about how many there were or how extensive it was, is even if it was, let's say, 3 or 4, the people who've already spoken publicly only about sexual assault and rape, if it was only them, does that make it okay? Like, does that make the October 7th massacres any less severe? Like, the fact that, 2,000 people were raped versus 100, does it really make that much difference? It's a part of the ideology that shaped what these attacks were. That's what the characteristic was of the sexual violence, and that's why it's important.
It's the same mentality of like, how many beheaded babies? Was it 5, 20? Why does it matter?
No.
Babies were murdered in their beds. Why does it matter? It's exactly the same thing.
If a formal statement is issued and it is incorrect, that's something else. But this whole 40 beheaded babies was actually not something that the state of Israel ever said. No official said that. It came from a broadcast that was in English, where someone said that there were 40 babies or children, I don't remember the exact word he used, who were killed including some who were decapitated, which I have actually seen photos of myself, photos that were not released. So we know that this happened, but we don't know that it was 40 of them. You know what I mean? So I think if there was a formal statement, it is important that the facts matter on those issues. But in the principle of October 7th, it doesn't actually matter. And that's what we're talking about.
And you're going to see on something that unfortunately I watch because I want to see what they're saying. Middle East Eye, for instance, on Instagram. Because they really have their eye on what's going on really in the Middle East. But it's not comical to me. It's incredibly sad that we, as not just Americans and Israelis, but in the whole world, we have to get better at our moral clarity and searching for the truth that we know deep down. I mean, you look at these crazy people standing on top of American Red Cross vehicles and with guns and masks, and they're so militant and they're literally shouting death to Jews and, globalize the Intifada. Who would you want to be stuck with, in these UNRWA places? You have to start looking for your own moral clarity. What should I be looking for and what really makes sense to me? So unfortunately, that goes back to that.
Well, we talked about the ceasefire that Hamas are not respecting, not just because of the names, but because they swapped people around. They didn't release civilians.
Recently, of course, they haven't released the list. They were supposed to release by yesterday the list of who was alive and who was not of the hostages.
We have a number of infractions. We have the fact that they didn't release who's alive, who's dead, the fact they didn't release the names, the fact that they put in who's going to say no, but 4 soldiers instead of 1 civilian, Arbel Yehoud, who we know is alive or they've claimed is alive. And so all these little infractions all the time. And now we have a situation where Hamas have told people to go back to the north, and Israeli soldiers are standing there saying, sorry, you have to release this civilian before we allow you to come to the north, because otherwise, what are we going to go back to October 6th when we just let them get away with more and more and more? And then we have Lebanon. And now in Lebanon, the 60-day ceasefire is up. Surprise, surprise, Hezbollah are still doing suspicious activities, arms. The Lebanese army have not taken up different posts that were supposed to. They haven't come through.
I'm so shocked.
And they're saying,
saw that coming.
So shocked. And they're saying, well, now Israel has to retrieve. And we're saying, well, why should we retrieve when you are not complying with the terms of the ceasefire? So we have Hamas not complying with the terms of the ceasefire. We have Hezbollah not complying. Well, Lebanon.
But Israel getting blamed for it.
But of course Israel's going to get blamed for it. No Jews, no news.
It's really remarkable. I just want to add one thing about media that I've seen in the last few weeks, how they will take like partial comments from Israeli media and then it will fly, especially in Arabic. Emily Damari, this just happened to. They keep reporting. I saw all over Arabic media and social media that Emily Damari said that she wants to be sent back to Hamas captivity because the implication is because it's better there. Where does this come from? I look into it and I find out Emily Damari told the media about how when she was told she was going to be released by the Hamas terrorists who were keeping her there, she said, no, switch me with Keith Segal, the American citizen who's supposed to be released this week, according to initial reports, because he's more elderly and she viewed him as more important to be released, which is actually very heroic of her.
Amazing woman.
And of course they said no because she's a civilian, whatever. So she was released instead. But they took that and made it into something that's pro-Hamas.
Yes.
Like, it's just so intellectually dishonest how you will manipulate certain things.
Charity, go ahead.
Because
I know what you're going to say.
2 of the prisoners that were supposed to be released yesterday said, we don't want to go to Gaza. Keep us here in the Israeli jails. We don't want to go. They had to convince them. One of them was convinced and ended up being shipped to Gaza.
The other one, they switched out with a different one.
And the other one, they switched out because they know that they would rather stay because they know that they're not going to get killed. Let's be honest. They know they're not going to get killed.
Well, they might have been fucking.
And people are asking me, because I did a tweet that went quite far with this, and people are asking me, well, why do you think that is? And it's exactly what Emily just said, because a lot of these prisoners are Fatah, and they have been released by Hamas because they want to show they have authority over Fatah, that they are the rulers, they are the saviors of the Palestinians. This is a slap in the face for Fatah, and these Fatah terrorists know that if they go back to Gaza, they actually may get killed.
Yeah. I think it's also it's important that people understand, I think people at home may not know this, that we have a severe censor, like we have a military censor, and there are things that we know, and I don't include myself in this, I don't know most of the things, but there are things that Israel knows that the wider world will never know, the wider civilians will never know. You'll never know, because we don't, as I said before, utilize information as propaganda for our people. Whereas there is no such thing on the other side. And not only that, but there's no one ensuring that what goes out is actually true.
Exactly. And nobody seems to care.
It's really important. It's really important that you can't judge a statement coming from Israel or from Israelis and a statement coming from Gaza or Hamas as the same thing. One is heavily censored to make sure that our people are put first, and the other is heavily censored to make sure that they look the best that they can look, and that, it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. And that's one of the reasons, and I believe in it, but it's one of the reasons that we severely lose the media war, because we don't exploit and we don't.
I want to add one thing that I commented to my friend I was having a conversation about this with, which is that we found out only a couple of years ago that in the Munich massacre in 1979, that there was sexual mutilation of some of the Israeli athletes. Castration included, inside of the dorms where they were held hostage by Palestinian terrorists in, the Munich games in the 1970s, okay? It didn't come out until a few years ago. So yes, there is a lot of information about sexual violence, about the barbaric nature of what happened to certain victims of October 7th that we are never going to hear. Never. And also some of it is going to be used in the cases that will be used against the Nukhba terrorists. So some of these are in evidence, legally speaking, also not even military evidence, criminal evidence, because I believe they're going to try them as civilians to try, I hope, to give them the death penalty, which you cannot do in a military court, as far as I understand.
So a lot of my friends back home who really want to play for the other side, which I get, and I want everyone saved from Hamas terrorists, including people who live in Palestine. But there have been people who've been saying it's going to be very hard to prove that there was sexual violence, and they're using that as, see, it doesn't exist. That's not true. It's that we actually look at, sperm evidence and things that you cannot find way after it's happened. They're using that also against us, which is so unfair.
Use everything they can, but
yeah.
Let's just end the discussion with actually a very nice little bit of, how do you say this, humiliation or embarrassment that we did to the released terrorists yesterday. I just saw a video this morning. They all got a yellow pin.
Is that really what that was? That's what it looked like.
They all got a yellow pin put on their shirts, and when they came out and they did the whole ceremony for them with the flags and the Palestinians took them in, the leadership, they all had a yellow pin. So there you go. Sometimes a little bit of creativity and cleverness, that's the real way to deal with things. And now, unfortunately, never a lack of scumbags this week. Shoshana.
Oh, my scumbag is Al Jazeera. Shocking, I know. But Al Jazeera actually had the balls to tweet out that the 4 soldiers were released by Hamas in the uniforms they were taken in. No, they were taken in their pajamas, barefoot. You, Hamas, put them in strange fatigues that were not IDF uniforms, and we know that they've taken them because we know that they have stolen them from bases. But Al Jazeera, what kind of media outlet are you? You don't even bother trying. We have the pictures, we have the videos of them being taken in their pajamas. So who do you think you are, and how dumb do you think your audience is? Or do you just think they're all raging anti-Semites? You might not be wrong, but you're my scumbag of the week.
That was...
Al Jazeera does try. They try quite a bit to be a spokesperson for Hamas. They're working very hard to be a spokesperson of Hamas. I also want to add about the whole uniform thing. This is obviously intentional to try to present to the Arab world that they're combatants. They are non-combat military personnel. There is not even really a debate as to whether or not they're legitimate targets because there is no legal war. They cannot be a prisoner of war even if they were combat soldiers captured from the base who were in uniform on duty, which they weren't, because there is no war. Hamas doesn't have the legal authority under international law, even in the UN, to declare a war because they're not the legitimate leadership of the Palestinians. So there is zero legal basis for this, absolutely zero. And it's really upsetting to see how stupid people are, but not surprising.
Not surprising. But thank you for that, Emily. That's important.
And just to tack on to Al Jazeera, a close friend and colleagues of Al Jazeera, the New York Times, who basically, their headline was, oh, in a show of force, Hamas releases hostages. Who are you working for, New York Times? Hamas? Really?
That's what it seems like.
It's incredible.
It is incredible. And what's devastating is that if you are a decent person, and I believe most people are decent people, where are you going to get news that's just news? That's just not a mouthpiece of Hamas or a mouthpiece
They don't know this. This is what's dishonest. They don't know the bias.
That's the problem. When I was in the UK doing my show this summer, I kept asking people, where are you getting your news from? And they would all say, Al Jazeera, BBC, they watch what's going on at the UN. They don't watch it on C-SPAN. They watch the pieces that they put out there, and they're constantly in their own feeds and their algorithms. We need to stand up and we need to figure out how to, I mean, I'm really into free speech, as you know, but there should be a limit to free speech when it comes to just bashing.
Version of the United States of America and the entire Western world, yeah, ban TikTokies.
Let's start with that. Okay, Emily, who's your scumbag this week?
Having so much fun talking about everyone else's scumbag. So mine this week is Michael Domino, who is an appointee, or I guess a new appointee in the Pentagon, head of, well, I don't know if he's head, but one of the Middle Eastern politics experts. Now, Mr. Domino has called the Abraham Accords a massive mistake because it operates on the basis that you can solve conflicts in the Middle East without solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict first. So the whole John Kerry, nothing will be solved until there's peace between Israelis and Palestinians, which of course is not true. That is why the Abraham Accords works. That is why it is genius. That's why it's a huge success, but we're not done with Mike Domino yet. He also made fun of Iranians for saying that they wanted regime change, and of course reduced their argument to saying, well, you know, we can't just bomb Iran a few times and expect the regime to change, as if that's what the Iranian people have been asking for. They're asking for the Western world not to be propping up the Islamic regime in Iran, but it's not surprising to see him willfully misrepresent the will of the Iranian people because he worked at the Quincy Institute, which of course was founded by Trita Parsi, who himself has been accused of being an agent of the Islamic Republic throughout his time in public life in the United States. He also advocated for the U.S. to cut off defensive support, his words, defensive support for the state of Israel in the fight against Hezbollah. Never mind the fact, of course, that Hezbollah has murdered hundreds of American soldiers. So there's not so much going there for the whole America First policy of the disturbing anti-America right. Of course, as I mentioned, he's an ally of the Quincy Institute, of Trita Parsi. He's been on a notorious anti-Israel podcast of Glenn Greenwald, in which he basically said that the United States needs to back off of supporting Israel and withdraw from their activities and their support in the Middle East, which of course is completely wrong thinking and also against what Trump is advocating for, as well as Secretary of State Rubio, because if the U.S. withdraws from the Middle East, that doesn't mean the Middle East is suddenly sovereign and independent. It means that other actors get involved. Yeah. It's a power vacuum. If it's not the United States, it's going to be Russia, it's going to be China, and it's going to be the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is part of the reason we got into this in the first place with Obama's foreign policy and why we see effective colonies of the Islamic regime in Iran. And that's not going to change until we stop this policy. Now, Domino, unfortunately, is not the only Trump appointee that's problematic. There are already a lot of calls on social media to remove his offer. I don't know what the status is of that, but we also have Witkoff, who's pretty controversial in my book because he's made millions off of Qatar. He was the one who oversaw this hostage deal. There are different opinions on that, of course. I won't even get into that, but I will say that when you're going around the international media praising Qatar and acting like the Qatari royal family is, paying you to be their spokesperson, something is already wrong, okay? He should not be doing what he's doing. I do not support this at all. And then, of course, there's also Dan Caldwell, who is a ideological ally of Michael Domino, also another appointee in the national security system of the United States. So, Trump, you were doing so well. Marco Rubio is the best. There are many, many, many great appointees. We are very excited for a better, freer world. But get rid of these people.
Why?
Thanks.
That's great, Emily. But why do you think they're so opposed, this kind of ideology that these people have is so opposed to the really big appointments he's made? Why did they get in there? How do they slip in there?
Well, I think that there's a lot of involvement from, you've spoken about this, from the right, the Tucker Carlson type right? Which a lot of it is being funded or somehow backhandedly supported by Qatar, by even Iran. In some cases, there's an Iran multimillionaire who is funding some of Tucker Carlson's ventures. A lot of people don't know that. Believe he's Iranian Pakistani. I don't know that there's any affiliations with the regime, but I do know
About the moolah, isn't it?
exactly, yeah.
Oh my God. Well, that's a little bit disturbing. Well, let's hope that they wake up, because it's a shame. Trump really has done so many great things, including calling for Jordan and Egypt to take in the Palestinians until Gaza's rebuilt. Like, whoever had the guts, the chutzpah, to say that? They're, of course, horrified, but they can't say anything because it's America. And this is exactly the leadership we need.
Horrified because they don't want the Palestinians.
Of course they don't.
Definitely not Jordan.
Jordan doesn't want one. They said it very clearly. Barb.
Who do I want to bring for Shabbos?
Who do you want to bring for Shabbat?
I would love to bring all the people who are calling out Elon Musk for doing this little dance thing. It's so interesting how, like I said before, people choose to see what they want. Please check your moral clarity. Elon went to a Jewish school as a kid. His name is Hebrew. It means tree. He cares so much about the Jewish people. He wears a Bring Them Home necklace since someone gave it to him closely after October 7th. He's been to the border, unlike someone who just, thank God, left the White House. He cares about Kibbutz Berry. He's been to all these sites. He even went with Ben Shapiro to see Holocaust sites. And you have the audacity to say that he's just undercurrently like really supporting of Nazis. It just doesn't make any sense to me. He's the kind of person that's going to say what he wants. He literally bought Twitter so that he can say whatever the hell he wants. And yet there are people who are standing in line to get into parades with other people who are holding signs that literally say death to all Jews, God forbid, and also let Hitler finish the job. And you stand with these people alongside of them because you hate Israel so much. And you're willing to say that now you care about Nazism, and please check your moral clarity and figure out whose side you're on and what you're really fighting for.
All we see is Nazi salutes with the kafirs in all of these protests.
Well, my favorite was AOC. What did she say? AOC was furious. She was outraged that Elon Musk would make this and all the Republicans should be against it. And I'm like, honey, you were at the encampment at Columbia University. What are you talking about?
Intifada, and there is only one solution. She sat with Jon Stewart this week and had a nice little interview. And I just thought to myself, please come for Shabbos, both of you. Because John, you have gone way off you're literally praising AOC.
You cook at Shabbos that you actually think this is going to work.
I got understood. It's sitting with people and showing them Jewish values and differences of opinion at the same meal and having fun and singing together, making l'chaims, giving each other blessings.
Bart, they don't care.
We can have different views about this. Unlike The View, we have 4 very different views on this show.
I love that you're still hanging on there, but the fact that you could really bring them around, I hope you never lose that optimism. But that's
We celebrate each other's differences.
I already have you on the show. All right, so even though my scumbag is a repeat one, a very recent repeat one, because Emily picked them last week, but how could we not bring them back? The Red Cross. You have outdone yourselves. Okay, where do we start? They go on stage in this farce of a propaganda ceremony for Hamas. They sit there like they're the judges in a prize ceremony, like it's Eurovision. You sign whatever they made you sign, whilst those 4 incredible women who made you look even worse, you hypocritical. Okay. The Red Cross. You were the ones who went to Auschwitz and said, nothing to see here. You're the ones that wrote a letter to my mother when she applied for a job as a nurse and said, we can't employ you because you're a Jew. You're the ones who have refused to help any of the hostages, not even, if you have so much power that you can stand on stage with Hamas, you couldn't pass a medicine, one prescription to any of the hostages. You tell the prime minister to his face, we don't do anything. But yet, you can stand on stage And you can sit there and sign certificates and goodie bags that our girls got for their time in captivity, abused, and everything that was done to them. And on top of that, your vans now have a little Palestinian flag on them. So well done. You have outdone yourselves in not just being useless, but in being working for the enemy of humankind, the Red Cross. There are not enough words. Scumbag is not enough words for what you are right now.
They gave legitimacy.
Yes.
You know, if you feel that you don't have the power, you really, I can't go against Hamas, they've literally got a gun to my head. Okay, then say to them, I just won't be on the stage, or I just won't, like, have a backbone. Don't give legitimacy. I'm just wondering where they got this stuff printed. Did you see the massive banners behind them? I know how much banners cost to print. Where the hell are they get a print shop? I thought Gaza was completely profitable. So where are they getting it?
Banami.
Bannerman.
The only steady job. They bring him in from Tehran, you know?
By the way, I don't talk with the Russ. That was fabulous. Somebody should give them a reference for a better English editor. There were about 4 different typos.
That is the least of it. But honestly, to sit there with that farce, and these 4 young women had more courage, heart, soul than all of them combined. All of them combined. Those 4 women make me proud and make me feel like the Jewish people are fine. We are just fine. We're better than fine. If this is our future, we're good.
The queens with rats. That's what we saw.
That is exactly true. That is exactly true. We saw them juxtaposed, and I'm like, we okay.
Okay. All right. Well, that completes our Scumbag of the Week segment. And now, of course, as we always do, finish with positive vibes. Who are the heroes amongst all those rats? Barb, let's start with you.
I'll start. Elise Stefanik. Wow. I was surprised to learn that you weren't Jewish. I really thought you were until I looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I get now.
She's still invited for Shabbos.
She's totally invited for Shabbos. You'd be the Shabbos queen. So she is officially the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Go Trump. Yes, thank you for that. That was amazing. And she called out the corruption at the UN and mentioning how Israel has been called out for human rights violations and more resolutions against Israel than any other nations combined.
If you look at the anti-Semitic rot within the United Nations, there are more resolutions targeting Israel than any other country, any other crisis combined. And we have significant national security councils, the anti-Semitism, whether it's UN women failing to condemn Hamas's terrorist attack and terrorist regime against innocent civilian women, using rape and targeting women, specifically taking them hostage. I am overjoyed that those 3 young women hostages were returned home. We need to stay committed to ensuring every hostage is brought home. I've met with many hostage families. This position, we need to be a voice of moral clarity on the UN Security Council and at the United Nations at large, for the world to hear the importance of standing with Israel.
I was really thinking about this, like what makes the UN, I mean, I listened to Hillel Neuer for 20 years already. Great job, Hillel, at UN Watch. Why are we always the target? And I think, well, first of all, we're the only Jewish country in the world, in case no one knew that. It's not Poland and it's not Russia. But besides that, we take it. We have Jewish people who go, yeah, I mean, I know we should be nicer to the prisoners or prisoners of war, or, you know, even if they need a fair trial. It's enough. We need to have a backbone and stop and allowing these things from happening. And this should not be happening. I can't stand it. So thank you for calling that out. And thank you for stating the 50 years since Zionism is racism resolution that was tried to be passed. And Moynihan quoting him. I really appreciate that. You are amazing. I love you. I think that if there was a Jew in your position right now, they would not be as tough and scared to say what the things that you're saying. So I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for being an ally. I can't say enough about you. You're my hero for the week.
She's awesome. And, you know, what people forget is that the UN is funded principally by the United States. And for the first time, that is going to be in question if they don't shape up. And that is like a real gun on the table.
Yeah.
And she's put it there.
And what is interesting, because Nikki Haley was the last person that I felt was actually doing their job at the UN as opposed to just, you know, stamping what they do. And it's interesting to me that they're both really strong non-Jewish women who have backbones. I'm really feeling this female power. And you said something about you said something about racism and Zionism racism. And this week, I don't know what exactly clicked for me, but I said, calling Zionism racism is like calling feminism sexism.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening here? Why is there no moral clarity? So I actually wonder if there's a little bit of that womanhood in there that can see behind this whole farceness.
Have different qualities. It's a good thing.
Yeah, right. Sorry, Emily, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I have to push back against something that you said, which is that if there was a Jew in her position, they wouldn't be the same, or they wouldn't have the same backbone. I completely reject this. I hate so much when people say, oh, well, we need someone non-Jewish to speak on our behalf because we don't have credit, because people don't listen to it. That's not the answer. The reason we have the state of Israel is so that we can speak for ourselves, so that we can define for ourselves who we are and what we do as a nation. So this whole oh, well, we need someone who isn't Jewish to speak for us because they have more credibility. No, they don't speak in our place. They speak to support us, or they speak because they're a part of Israeli society, but they do not replace the Jewish community and our position in representing ourselves. And there has been so much of this during this war, so much of it, and it's too much.
However, what I think Bob's point was, because I always say this, is unfortunately, sometimes when we have Jews in office, not in Israel. In America or around the world, there is almost that feeling that they can't be too pro-Israel.
Well, yeah,
they roll themselves.
Shapiro wasn't chosen as the vice president, but this entire way of thinking is wrong, and we should speak out against it, and we should be public about it in the media.
I agree with you.
Look at Chuck Schumer. Yeah. Look at Chuck Schumer. He's the perfect example of a Jew in an incredibly powerful position. So is Lieberman. So they're always a bit careful not to be told that they're dual loyalty, which is another anti-Semitic trope, according to the IRA definition.
She also said that Israel has a right to all of the land, which is a very Davidic dynasty type of thing to say. And I think a lot of Jews would...
Right, it doesn't mean that's the solution.
I agree with you. And yet, this is a really healthy debate. I'm glad you just pushed back on that. It's really important. I would love to see a Jew who's proud say all these things, but it just doesn't always happen.
That's a great hero.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, that really brings me to my hero. Toss it over to me, Fleur. Because when you talk about someone who is proud for who they are, Liri Albag is my heroine of the week, all of the Khatifot. But Liri, who is one of the younger hostages, she's still a teenager, yes. So she was abducted at 18 and now she's 19. And she actually made one of their Hamas propaganda videos when you saw her, and she was obviously distraught. That young woman came out. You have to watch, and you have to look at it not like, oh, they were treated great, like a Club Med vacation. No, you have to see, they knew they were going to continue to be surrounded by these Hamasnikim, these horrible monsters who had kept them for 477 days, mostly underground, or dressed them as Palestinian women and shuttled them from a tent to a tunnel to an apartment in hiding, and that their parents would be watching. They knew their parents would be watching because they were exposed to some news channels, and they knew that the first thing their parents were going to see, and the whole country, they were doing this for the whole country. Every Jewish person, every decent person in the world is going to see them walking out. And they decided that's their power. They're not going to see me broken. They're not going to see me distraught. Not like that video Hamas made me do. They're going to see my soul and my Jewish pride come out, and whatever happens, happens. And they walked out there and they smiled and they fist bumped and they thumbs up. And you could see that they were supporting one another. I don't remember exactly who was holding whose hand because I literally only got to see it after Shabbat. Like I had to wait until after Shabbos. But some of them were, were more reticent, shyer. You could see a little bit more closed in, but all four of them came out with thumbs up. They smiled and they showed the world. They showed the world who we are. I can't thank them enough for that bravery. And Liri, we are told, was really the backbone. She was the leader, and she coordinated with the terrorists, with the people who held them. She advocated for the other ones. They all took care of each other. Is there any more epitome of Jewish women than this? This is it for me.
You know, for me, the most interesting reaction was there was you could see the security people, the Shabak, all the military command watching this. And everybody started laughing when they saw this. And the parents and the families, they were like, oh, wow, exactly what you said. They did it for us. They were actresses on stage. It's just, I can't get over that. I can't get over the bravery of these women.
Daniela's boyfriend proposed to her as she's running to him, marry me. Like, guys, like, as depressing and as horrific as this year and a half has been, these four women and the women last week are just giving me like this like real understanding of who we are as people. And people don't get it. People don't understand the Jewish spirit. We've been battered and beaten down, and we will never be broken.
That's really, those were the images of exactly that sentence.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for that.
Emily.
Going along the same lines, mine is Naama Levy. And really because she has become such a symbol of this war. And not just Naama Levy, but all four of them, but in particular Naama Levy, because of her symbolism throughout this war. I don't think that there's anybody, at least in the Jewish community and many people beyond, of course, as we know, who hasn't seen these harrowing images of Naama Levy and those other girls being kidnapped from their beds in pajamas in southern Israel, being taken into Gaza for 470-something days. And it takes such incredible resilience to be in such a position. And exactly what you said, the way that they did it, they inspired the entire country. They inspired the entire country. Like, that is leadership.
Exactly.
It's really, really leadership. And I was so inspired, you know, as an Israeli, but I think also it's not just for us, it's also for the hostages who are still there. And they spoke, you know, Leary spoke already. She's spoken about the fact that because they had access to Al Jazeera.
Yes.
So she did actually, she knew about the campaign for their release. She heard interviews with her parents. She heard an interview in which, you know, in the first hostage release, not this last week, but last year, where her parents wished her happy birthday on the radio. And they said that a lot of times that these comments that are able to slip through here or there, and the fact that people care, and the fact that people are hanging posters, and the fact that they're not forgotten has meant so much to them. And so the same way that Naama and Karina and Daniela and Leary are not forgotten, and we're not forgotten now that, you know, they're home. Agam, first and foremost, I want to mention, because you are not forgotten. We will continue to fight for your release, and every single other hostage who is there, including the bodies of hostages who haven't made it, we will continue to fight for until they're back home.
Amen. Amen. And following on from that, I'll take the last two women who came out yesterday. One of them is a Jerusalemite from my neighborhood, Karina Ariev. The mayor of Jerusalem congratulated her coming out. And the other one is Daniela Gilboa, whose name is Danielle Gilboa, but when she was taken, her parents went to a rabbi, and the rabbi said, add the Daniela from God, so that will give a good omen for coming out. Oh, okay, here goes Barb. So Daniela, she didn't even know. And her mother said, I want her to come out and tell me off for changing her name while she was in captivity. That's the moment that I want. But, and again, her boyfriend of 8 years.
That's amazing.
8 years.
Since they were 12.
Since they were 12. But what's really actually moving about Daniela specifically, Daniela, was that a few months back, do you remember when they said that there was a dead female
Oh my God, I forgot.
hostage from the Lookout Girls?
Oh my God.
That was her. So imagine her parents.
And they accused us of it, of course.
They accused us of attacking somewhere and killing Daniela Gilboa. They said that the tattoo that she has was a tattoo. So this is part of the psychological warfare. They basically hinted that this woman was dead.
I completely forgot. I remember
That was her.
And then it went away. It was like in the news, it went away
But
completely.
imagine you are her family. You are her parents. And this is what they're telling you. That she came back from the dead.
Hamas told the media that she died in an Israeli airstrike.
Exactly. Why would they do that? Psychological warfare.
Saying, but then release her, meaning why do it and then release her?
Because that's the truth and no one
That's
Who's going to hold them accountable?
Who's holding them accountable? Exactly. Not the media around the world, not anybody else. And so these two women, just to complete the quad that was released yesterday, I mean, we will be talking about these women for years. These are the role models for our children and our grandchildren. These women, these lionesses of Judah, these mothers of Zionism, God bless you both. You are both, along with all the other hostages that were released, all those women, they are brave beyond belief, and we should be so proud. And so on that wonderful note, my own lionesses of Judah over here, we pray that by next week, and we know that, please God, more will be released. And we pray that as many as possible are released alive, God, please. And that we live and pray to see all of them out of those hellholes that they're in. And so till another week, thank you for watching us on The Quad.